As he pointed out, think about all these executive actions, not only on this, but all the health care provisos and everything else. Now, a lot of those have been vindicated by court, so you can give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But a lot of these EPA regulations that the court has slapped down, those were eventually started by executive edict. And on we go. Even the slowing down in deportations here that courts have also right up to the Supreme Court, or short of the Supreme Court, have also said the president has gone too far, but yet continues. So we've got the Hills, Kevin Cirilli here, Ashley Pratt, and Dagan McDowell on these executive fiat statements. What are we to make of it, Dave?
That there are going to be more and more of them leading up to when President Obama leaves office. There'll be more and more rulemaking for sure, whether it's writing additional rules under Dodd-Frank, food safety, you name it, the president's going to try and get it done. And let's not forget the overtime rule. The Labor Department has raised the overtime threshold for up to 5 million Americans, and that was done by executive action. So a lot of the president's agenda is being pushed through, not with Congress, but of his own order.
And you know what? A lot of this started with, this is what I want to do, Kevin, with the federal workforce. And then it expanded to, well, you better act in kind. And then, sure enough, people acted in kind. And that's what happened. And it did remind, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat, of just the power of that office and really leveraging it. The question here is whether you're doing so constitutionally. What do you think?
Absolutely. You know, just a few months ago, President Obama said that he would be using the power of the pen, and he kept his word. Whether it's from immigration to health care or, of course, to the Cuba, to the Iran deal. I mean, there's just so much going on with how he's expanded the office of the president. And, you know, with the anniversary of Dodd-Frank, I mean, just tomorrow, the comment period closes on more regulations for financial advisors. So clearly the administration is looking to finish out the end of President Obama's term with more executive orders.
You know, a lot of the times presidents do this, and in rapid succession, Ashley, and on a rapid number of areas, too, to confuse you and to think, well, I'm going to blitzkrieg you as FDR did. And even when it came to packing the Supreme Court, even the court said, all right, you went a little too far on that one. But my point is that you get a lot of the other stuff you wanted. So to the president's credit, he gets that. What do you think?
Well, he always gets what he wants because he does things unilaterally without Congress. So that becomes a lot of the issue here. He just makes these decisions which he thinks, you know, are great for the country when honestly, a lot of these are working in detriment to the United States. If we look at Cuba today with the embassy opening here in D.C., and then we have this whole issue with Iran now, I just don't see how he can honestly think that these things are good deals for the United States, for our economy, or for our people. And that's just how he views his presidency. He can do whatever he wants with the power of his pen. Just look at the student loan example. I mean, he says, I'm going to forgive student loans. I'm going to do this. And, you know, students, you can actually now go to free community college. And it's just become this whole idea of spending, which I think is absolutely atrocious because we're never going to nail down our budget and deficit if we continue to spend.
But, you know, there's a method to this madness. And, Dagan, I know you and I touched on it in prior weeks and months even. This idea that even if you don't get your way, you will put it out in the public debate, get a media to portray what you're advocating is a good thing, and eventually force change. It is more than coincidental to me that Walmart, McDonald's, and all these other companies started raising their minimum wage, maybe a reflection of competition market, but it could also be heavy jawboning out of Washington.
Also at issue when the president makes a lot of these moves, even with the passing of the Affordable Care Act, the good stuff was early on,
right.
The easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit. You see that with a lot of these different orders, like with Cuba, for example. What will open up more than likely at first is travel. That's something everybody can relate to. Oh, I want to go to Cuba. The problem is, once you push all of these things through, will a Republican president, if one is elected, come in and try and repeal them? Very difficult to do in many instances, particularly if someone is used to the overtime rules. Are you going to have enough gumption to repeal those? If Marco Rubio says he has enough guts, if he got elected to the presidency, he would reverse what's happened with Cuba. Easier said than done. So he will push through a lot of things, and even if a Republican is elected to the White House, they probably won't be reversed, even like Obamacare.
Guys, thank you. Well, go ahead, finish that point.
Neil, I think it's important there. You said force change, and I think looking at that right there is a statement in and of itself. This president is trying to force the government to mandate its people and its businesses and its operations and say, this is what's best for you, without actually making it better for the people. And I think that's something to point out here as we definitely expand our relations with Cuba, which has been to their detriment for a very long time under the Castro regime. The government thinking that they're better and forcing their people to do things.
What's happening, though, is the mainstream media, much of the media isn't really fighting on it. So, you know, that's where it goes.
That's another issue.
All right, guys, thank you all very, very much.
60 Minutes interview, McCabe admits that his attempt to undermine the president began almost immediately after his boss, Jim Comey, was fired. And it was, of course, due to Russia.
I was speaking to the man who had just run for the presidency and won the election for the presidency, and who might have done so with the aid of the government of Russia, our most formidable adversary on the world stage. And that was something that troubled me greatly.
How long was it after that you decided to start the obstruction of justice and counterintelligence investigations involving the president?
I think the next day I met with the team investigating the Russia cases, and I asked the team to go back and conduct an assessment to determine where are we with these efforts and what steps do we need to take going forward.
Alan Dershowitz is a retired Harvard Law School professor. He's the author of the book, The Case Against the Democratic House Impeaching Trump, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on. So now the suspicions of many are confirmed by one of the players in it. The Department of Justice discussed trying to remove the president using the 25th Amendment. What's your reaction to that?
Well, if that's true, it is clearly an attempted coup d'etat. Relating to what your former guest said, let's take the worst case scenario. Let's assume the President of the United States was in bed with the Russians, committed treason, committed obstruction of justice. The 25th Amendment simply is irrelevant to that.
Right.
That's why you have an impeachment provision.
Exactly.
The 25th Amendment is about Woodrow Wilson having a stroke. It's about a president being shot and not being able to perform his office. It's not about the most fundamental disagreements. It's not about impeachable offenses. And any Justice Department official who even mentioned the 25th Amendment in the context of President Trump has committed a grievous offense against the Constitution. The framers of the 25th Amendment had in mind something very specific, and trying to use the 25th Amendment to circumvent the impeachment provisions or to circumvent an election is a despicable act of unconstitutional power grabbing. And you were right when you said it reminds me of what happens in third world countries. Look, these people may have been well-intentioned. They may believe that they were serving the interests of the United States, but you have to obey the law, and the law is the Constitution. And the 25th Amendment is as clear as could be. Incapacity, unable to perform office. That's what you need. That's why you need 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate agreeing. And it has to be on the basis of a medical or psychological incapacity, not on the basis of even the most extreme crimes, which there's no evidence were committed. But even if they were, that would not be a basis for invoking the 25th Amendment.
So this is not simply
And I challenge any left-wing person to get on television and to defend the use of the 25th Amendment. I challenge any of my colleagues who are in the Get Trump at Any Cost camp to come on television and justify the use of the 25th Amendment other than for physical or psychiatric incapacity.
I bet they're doing that right now. But this is an attack on our system, I would say, not just on the president. Alan Dershowitz, thank you very much.
It's an attack on our system, and it's an attack on the Constitution. Thank you.
Scary.
If that's true, it is clearly an attempted coup d'etat. The 25th Amendment simply is irrelevant. It's not about the most fundamental disagreements. It's not about impeachable offenses. And any Justice Department official who even mentioned the 25th Amendment in the context of President Trump has committed a grievous offense against the Constitution.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight we have news for you, breaking news that for whatever reason is being downplayed or ignored by other media outlets, but we think you ought to know about it. 5 simple words describe it. There was no Russian collusion. There was no evidence whatsoever that the Trump campaign conspired in any way with the government of Vladimir Putin during the last presidential election, period. That's apparently the conclusion of the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee. That committee spent 2 years investigating this question, of course, hundreds of interviews, reams of classified documents, untold millions in taxpayer dollars. No collusion at all. That is what we are hearing tonight they have found. Now, if you've been following this story at all, and of course you have been, you will not be surprised by this. No Russian collusion is a lot like moon landing actually happened, or abominable snowman was probably a long-haired mountain goat. You knew that already because you're not an idiot. But if so, compare your mental acuity to that of prominent political figures here in Washington. Next time you feel dumb, watch this tape.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
Trump has the Kremlin clan surrounding him. There's more to be learned about it. I believe there's been collusion.
It's starting to smell more and more like collusion.
We saw cold, hard evidence of the Trump campaign, indeed the Trump family, eagerly intending to collude possibly with Russia.
Smells like collusion. Plenty of evidence of collusion. Hard evidence of collusion. In the end, it was all fake. And they knew that. They knew it wasn't real. They were lying from the very first day. Only their remarkable aggression, their willingness to say literally anything, no matter how outrageous or slanderous or vile, kept the rest of us from catching on to what they were doing. If the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is willing to call someone a traitor to this country, there's got to be some truth to it, right? Actually, no, there wasn't. It was always a hoax. Adam Schiff is an unscrupulous charlatan. That's the real lesson here. Don't expect people like Schiff to apologize, though, or correct the record, much less repair the lives of the people they have destroyed. Carter Page still can't find a job. Roger Stone is still facing life in prison. Meanwhile, Schiff's PR team on the other channel continues like none of this ever happened. Here's Malcolm Nance of MSNBC explaining that the results of a 2-year Senate investigation mean nothing. People are guilty because we say they're guilty. We must punish them.
Let me just say one thing. When Benedict Arnold gave the plans to West Point to Major Andre, and they captured Major Andre, they did not have any real information linking those plans to Benedict Arnold, other than the fact that he was in his presence at one point during that day. But everyone knew it was treason when they caught the man and they hung him. So at some point, there is going to be a bridge of data here that is going to be unassailable.
No one had any evidence, but everyone knew it was treason when they caught the man and they hung him. That says it all. Let's repeat that once again slowly so you can write down those words and put them on your fridge as a memento of the terrifying mass hysteria we've all just lived through. Quote, everyone knew it was treason when they caught the man and they hung him. That's our country now. That's what the Russia insanity has done to us. The real government shutdown has lasted for nearly 2.5 years. That's 1% of this country's entire existence. We no longer have meaningful policy debates in Washington. We have investigations instead. Nobody can think clearly. Everybody's afraid. The country's core problems don't even rate as interesting anymore, either to legislators or the TV pundits who comment on legislators. The suicide rate just hit a 50-year high. Did you know that? We're in the middle of the worst drug epidemic in the history of America, including the one after the Civil War and the heroin epidemic of the 70s and the crack epidemic of the 80s. This is way worse. And it's one of the reasons the life expectancy in many parts of the country is dropping. This is starting to look like Boris Yeltsin's Russia. And yet nobody in Washington even notices. All Adam Schiff and the rest of the wild-eyed morons can think about is Vladimir Putin, collusion, our hacked democracy, and all the other mindless slogans they've repeated long enough to half believe. We've spent 2 years perpetuating a fraud, and they are still doing it. What is this? It's negligence on a stunning scale. It has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with running this country, and they're not. Historians will look back on this moment in amazement and in sadness. Who put these crackpots in charge and let them break things? Why didn't any responsible person in the media say anything about it? Why did they collude in the charade? What the hell happened to America? History will judge us for this moment. Adam Schiff's grandkids will be ashamed of what he did.